he should take care of paradise, keeping clear the source of the river of life. The laws of justice and love, fundamentals of the kingdom of light, should be honored. As a rational ruler, it would be the man, in a gesture of appreciation and gratitude, who would freely accept this government from him who created him. The hosts, who were amazed witnessing the revelation of divine detachment, realized that the Eternal of Light would not rule over the universe except with the consent of the human. The man, by the will of the Eternal, was made the arbiter of creation. In his glorious being, made in the image of the Creator, shone the seal of eternal dominion. After revealing to the couple the infinite honor and responsibility of their mission, the Creator made them aware of the spiritual warfare that had been waged for conquest of universal dominion. Lucifer, who for countless ages served the heavenly king in Zion, had been corrupted by pride and by selfishness, followed by a third of the rational hosts, now sought to dethrone the Eternal, dishonoring him with vile accusations. Having revealed to man the painful situation in which the universe was in, the Eternal, in a solemn gesture, showed him 2 towering trees, laden with great fruit, rising on both banks of the river that was born from the throne. The rising tree on the right of the Eternal, revealed to be the tree of life, a monument of the kingdom of light. The rising tree on the other edge proved to be the tree of knowledge of good and evil, the symbol of rebellion. Eating the fruit of the tree of life, the man would manifest his submission to the Creator, who is the source of life and light. Eating of the other tree would give the enemy the field of Zion. The inevitable result of this step would be eternal death, not only for humans but for all creation, which would reduce to chaos under the fury of rebellion. After contemplating at length the 2 lofty trees, which bear fruit externalized as infinite responsibility, Adam bowed himself to the Creator, saying, "You are worthy, Yahuwah, to reign over the universe, because by thy wisdom, love, and power, all things were created and remain." That Sabbath day, the divine emblem of triumph, filled with praise. All children of light joined the human being in the most harmonious hymn of praise to him whose greatness is peerless. Satan and his followers were astonished witnessing the great achievement of the Eternal. They bitterly witnessed the joy of the faithful before the coronation of man, an event that cast to the ground their strong objections raised against the divine government. Filled with frustration and anger, they now considered their plight. How terrible and humiliating to them was the thought of seeing their plans of rebellion divest themselves before the Creator, like the shadows of the night. If they could, they thought, they would fill the Sabbath darkness, banishing from the mind of the Eternal subjects any hope of victory. Finally, in his remarks, Satan and his followers realized they had one opportunity remaining. In the middle of the Garden of Eden, on the heights of Zion, lifted up by the river of life, was the tree of knowledge of good and evil. It would only take one human gesture, nothing more, and Satan would have under his power, forever, the
Who's coming?
domain. But how to seduce him? Excited at the prospect of a victory, Satan sought, with ingenuity, to devise a plan of approach. He knew that if he failed in his attempt, all hopes of victory would be diluted, scrapping all his dreams of conquest. He concluded that cheating would be a powerful weapon. Had it not been he who managed to dominate 1/3 of the heavenly hosts, he would await therefore a propitious time to set his snare. The history of the universe. Chapter 4. In Eden hung the sweet calm of perfect peace. Everywhere the lovely birds were heard singing their happy trills in constant praise to the Creator. All nature seemed to blossom and proclaim the kingdom of eternal joy. The animals in union played everywhere, always submissive to the man, the lord of that lovely paradise. Everything was happiness for the couple, but this became more intense in the cool of those spring days. The afterglow, which with its beauty tinged the sky, foreshadowing the dark nights, advertised them also the time of the daily visit of the Eternal. Together, under the light of his presence, a long time passed in happy conversation. With encouragement, the couple told the Eternal the amazing wonders that they discovered each day in nature. Yahuwah fondly revealed to them the meaning of each being. How grateful were they for the beautiful lessons learned at his feet. With each passing day, the more they felt love, respect, and admiration for the great Creator. He was so good, bringing them to life and giving them a home so full of delights. When they awoke to the joys of each new day, there came to them the remembrance of the embrace and the sweet singing of the Eternal, which made them fall asleep every night. The life of Adam and Eve in Eden was not idle. To them it was recommended that they care for the garden. The occupation was not wearisome, on the contrary, it was pleasant and invigorating. The Creator indicated work as a source of benefits to humans in order to occupy their mind and strengthen their body, developing all their faculties. In mental and physical activity, they found a high pleasure. It was also common to the young couple to receive visits from celestial beings. Visitors always had news to report and questions to ask. Adam and Eve spent a long time listening to them about the wonders of the kingdom of light. Through these visitors, Adam and Eve gained extensive knowledge of the Lucifer rebellion and its eternal consequences. Adam and Eve always begged the visitors to teach them how to join in the harmonious heavenly singing. They were delighted to join the choir of angelic voices. In his omniscience, Yahuwah knew the terrible enemy's intent. Calling his main hosts, he revealed to them the weight of the imminent danger that hung over the universe. Satan would set a trap in order to bring man to eat of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Before this revelation, the children of light were afraid, for they knew the tremendous ease of Satan to ensnare innocent creatures and throw them into their meshes of death. In solemn council, they decided to urgently send messengers to warn man of the great danger. 2 powerful angels were in charge of this crucial mission. Immediately, the commissioned messengers stormed the gates of Jerusalem, reaching the bosom of infinite space. Within moments, they transposed wildernesses, crossing galaxies en route. They entered the tunnel of the constellation Orion, approaching the new system. They could now make out a short distance away the blue planet, where the fate of the universe was about to be decided. In Eden, all was relaxed. The young couple remained in their innocent activities, enjoying the pleasure of happy living. Absent from their mind was thinking of how, at that moment, all the children of light were tense, thinking of their future being threatened. They then saw in the clear sky the sign of the approaching celestial visitors, and they raised their arms in a cheerful greeting. Adam and Eve wondered, though, why they did not see in their faces the same joy. The visitors brought on their face an expression of longing that they could not understand. Adam and Eve tried to change their sad features, asking them of the new discoveries made in heaven. The messengers, however, not having time available as before, interrupted with words of warning. They told them that Satan would set them a trap in order to get them to eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. If they heeded the temptation, it would succumb all creation into an eternal abyss of chaos. The angels reminded them that the kingdom had been entrusted to them as a sacred trust, and that they shall, in a life of fidelity, honor the one who emptied himself for love, putting himself in a position of host to the humans. Adam and Eve should be firm against the insinuations of the enemy, as it would seal the victory for the eternal kingdom of light. They told them the happy reward that would follow this triumph. The angels revealed that the plan was for Yahuwah to then transfer the heavenly Jerusalem to earth. There, again, earth would forever remain coupled to paradise, and man, submissive to the Creator, would reign forever without end upon Mount Zion, amid the universal praise of the hosts. But all this depended entirely on positioning the human face against the temptations of the enemy, who would do anything to snatch the kingdom. Adam and Eve were afraid to know the plans of Satan, but they were comforted to know he could not do them any harm, forcing them to eat the forbidden fruit. If perhaps he would seek to intimidate them with his power, all the hosts of the Eternal would come to their rescue. The messengers of the light completed their mission by recommending the couple remain vigilant, always bearing in mind the responsibility that rested upon them. They should not separate themselves from each other, not even for a moment, because on their own they could be swayed. Adam and Eve, thankful for the angels' warnings, joined their voices in a song of promise in an eternal victory. They were sure they would never abandon the blessed Creator upon hearing the voice of the tempter. Excited at the human promise, the two messengers returned to the bosom of the heavenly Jerusalem, where next to the holy hosts, they awaited with longing the heralded triumph. Satan saw the messengers of heaven approaching and heard the man singing, promising an eternal victory. This song made his envy and hatred increase so that he could not contain it. He then told his followers that soon he would silence that nagging voice, saying, "I'd do anything to transform human praise to the Creator into blasphemy." The hosts of rebels were curious to know the plans of their leader, but they were warned by him that they should wait until all decided to stay forever. If man would hearken to his voice and eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, they would be victorious, claiming forever the domain of the universe. If the man resisted, remaining faithful to the Creator, there was no longer any hope for them. Heaven seemed to be enveloped by an eternal security, but in the countenance of the man could be seen an expression of awe. Since the departure of the angels, Adam and Eve remained silent, meditating with reverence about the tremendous responsibility of their mission. They thought of the seriousness of the imminent moment that would seal his future and all of creation. Animated, however, at the thought of victory, they joined once more their voices in a song that expressed the certainty of heralded triumph. This melody banished from their minds all fear of defeat, and they cheerfully ran in the lush meadows, accompanied by spirited animals that seemed to celebrate the great achievement. They felt secure in their paradise, totally oblivious of the danger of a possible assault. Satan, who carefully watched the couple, realized now was his chance. He approached invisibly from heaven and was waiting for the best time to set his snare. Unaware of the presence of the enemy, the couple remained in their selfless joy, playing carelessly with the animals. In troubled countenance of Satan, there rose up a sneaky smile to witness a couple in carelessness. In their exultation, they had failed to meet the final recommendation of the messengers, which was to not move away from one another. The wily foe, not wasting time, took possession of the most beautiful serpent of paradise, gracefully moving it closer to Eve. Eve, seated on the lawn playing with the animals, realized the presence of the attractive snake, whose body reflected the colors of the rainbow. She was surprised to see the snake pick flowers and fruits from the garden, depositing them at her feet. Gratefully, she took the snake in her arms, devoting her affection. Having won the affection of the woman, Satan, in his cunning, began to draw her to the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Unaware of the danger, Eve followed the snake to the tree of testing. There, having the hidden enemy in her arms, she stroked it and told it of her endearments. Having in his eyes the brightness of seduction, the serpent began to speak. His words were full of wisdom and tenderness, and his voice like an angel. Eve could hardly believe her eyes. Her joy became immense to have a creature in her arms that was so fantastic. It began to talk of many things: love, the beauties of the garden, the power of the Creator.
Guys, give me a like if you're watching it live. Send me a comment as well. And guys, this is getting interesting, and then we're gonna listen to the rest.
Eve was amazed at the vast knowledge of the serpent, who discoursed with mastery on any subject. Encircled by this experience, Eve completely forgot her companion, even forgetting the warning of the angels. Adam, who also entirely forgot the advice of the heavenly messengers, had moved away in the company of some animals. After some time, there came with a vengeance into his mind the memory of the warnings received. Ringing in his ears clearly were the last words uttered by the angels: "Do not turn away from one another, not even for a moment separate, as it is dangerous." His heart beat quickened to not see Eve at his side. He then raised his voice to an anxious shout. His voice, echoing through the vaults of heaven, however, did not bring an answer. The silence almost choked him. In his grief, he began to run from one side to another, looking for her in vain. In this anxious search, he felt the breeze stroking his hair and recalled his first dream. That memory, however, broke down at the thought of the danger that threatened them. With mind taken by a great sense of guilt, Adam picked up the pace in distressing demand. Where was his loved one? Was there still time to involve her in his arms, freeing her from falling? Once again he raised his voice in a shout that reverberated throughout the anxious garden. "Eve, where are you?" He waited for a response, but heard only an empty echo of despair. He remembered the tree of knowledge of good and evil, which was the one place where his companion could be deluded. Hoping to block the only chance of the enemy, he advanced towards the place of proving. His heart beat quickly, contemplating the distant prohibited treetop. With the snake in her arms, Eve questioned it about many things. She marveled to see that the serpent greatly surpassed other serpents. He then told a lie, saying he was a snake like the rest, eating the fruits of paradise. He tasted that forbidden fruit one day and received, as if by magic, all the virtues. Looking at the tree of knowledge of good and evil, Eve was surprised and confused. Would the Creator in his love deprive something so good to his creatures? Seeing her surprise, Satan asked, "Did not Yahuwah say that ye shall eat of every tree of the garden?" Eve, restless, replied, "Of the fruit of the trees of the garden we eat, but the fruit of that tree that you claim to be a source of wisdom, Yahuwah said, ye shall not eat of it, lest ye die." The serpent, in a tone of disdain, said, "This is false. If so, I would have died. Surely the Eternal forbade them to eat from that tree to prevent the man from becoming as he, knowing all things." The seductive words of the serpent caused confusion in the mind of Eve of who to trust. She had in mind the memory of the order of the Creator and his sentence, but at the same time she had before her a tangible proof that contradicted it. Stunned, She began to doubt the character of the Eternal. In a challenge, the serpent harvested fruit from the forbidden tree and started to eat it. Putting a fruit in the hands of women, he encouraged her to eat, saying, "Did not the Eternal say that if someone touched that fruit, they would die?" A complete silence hung over the universe. In each inhabited planet, the children of light stared helplessly at the agonizing scene. Their future was that they must respect the free will granted to mankind, and that they would manifest their choice under the temptation of the enemy. The children of light suffered greatly when they saw the woman doubting him who so kindly gave them life and the chance to reign in that paradise. How could they doubt he who devoted so much love? Adam, a strong hope of securing a cherished victory, hastened like a race. He saw his beloved from afar, sitting by the tree of proving. What was Eve doing in that place so dangerous? A horrible feeling came upon him. He remembered once again the warnings received, but sought to banish it as he thought that he would reach his wife before something bad happened to her. Eve wavered in her conviction with the fruit in her hands. For a few moments the future seemed dark and terrifying to her, but she overcame this feeling by thinking of the glories she would gain by eating this fruit. Still somewhat undecided, she slowly raised her hands to touch the fruit to her lips. The subjects of the Kingdom of Light, shaken, fell down with astonishment. It seemed almost impossible at that point that the woman could come back. Why the faithful pale inquired about a possible hope. They witnessed with horror the terrible decision that Eve took to break forever with the Creator, becoming captive to death. The Eternal, who gazed in silent pain at that scene of rebellion, bowed his forehead with his face bathed in tears. He could not bear the pain of separation. The faithful who panicked and thought themselves vanquished were aware that all was not lost. If Adam resisted the temptation and remained faithful to the Eternal, he would seal the big victory. Eve, who was the victim of a mistake, could be made aware of her mistake being favored with heavenly forgiveness. When Adam, in his agonizing race, reached the place of testing, it was too late. Seated next to the river, Eve tasted the forbidden fruit carelessly. Adam shuddered. Was it really the fruit of proving? In a gesture of hope, he looked at the tree of knowledge of good and evil, but tearfully acknowledged the sad conviction. Filled with grief, he beheld his wife, but found no words to awaken her to so bitter a reality. In complete desperation, he raised his voice in a painful exclamation, "Eve! Eve, what are you doing?" By eating the forbidden fruit, the woman was taken by emotions that led her to imagine she'd reached a higher sphere of life. Upon hearing the voice of her husband, and taken by these illusory emotions, she raised her brow with a smile, but was surprised to see him crying. With deep sorrow, he sought to know the reason that led her to rebel against the Eternal. Eve promptly began to tell him the story of the wise, fantastical serpent. Satan knew this snake story would never convince the man to eat of the forbidden tree. He needed to find a subtle way to get him to seal his fate in the footsteps of his wife. Having Eve under his power, he decided to make her the object of tempting and would await the opportune moment to ensnare him. The memory of this sentence, "On the day you eat thereof, you shall surely die," made Adam very distressed. The expectation of seeing his beloved perishing in his arms was too much to bear. This distress, however, was decreasing to see that she was still happy and loving at his side, as if no harm had happened. Relieved, Adam smiled again, corresponding to the affections of his companion. He surrendered to the sweetest emotions, far from knowing that the enemy was involved in those hugs. In that moment of rapture, Eve began to tell him about her experience with the knowledge of good and evil. She told him of the treasures of wisdom that had been opened. In her new kingdom, she could live very happy. However, this happiness would be incomplete without the participation of her spouse. She told him of the impossibility of going back on her footsteps and urged him to follow. After talking to him of her decision, Eve, with a sweet smile, held out her hands containing a fruit and asked him to eat in demonstration of his love for her. With this tempting voice in his ears, Adam sat on the lawn in deep thought. His face became pale again, his hands trembling. He feared to rebel against the Creator, but at the same time he understood that he could not live apart from his companion, whom he loved with infinite love. Eve was flesh of his flesh, the extension of his being. He was distressed at having to make a decision so serious. The paleness of Adam's face was reflected on the faces of all the faithful to the Eternal. They had heard the suggestion of the enemy and realized with horror the vacillation of man. The indecision of Adam left them desperate. If he obeyed what Satan proposed, all happiness would be banished forever. In human decisions was the fate of the entire universe. Would he answer the call of Satan? After intense inner struggle, Adam looked at his companion, who he had joined with in eternal promises of delivery. He would not leave her now. He would share with her the results of the rebellion. Then he took the fruit from the hand of Eve and brought it to his mouth in a hasty gesture. Looking to stifle the voice of conscience, speaking to him of eternal damnation, Adam threw himself into the arms of his wife, enjoying the high price of his rebellion. Satan, with shouts of triumph, left Eden, flying swiftly along to his innumerable hosts, who looked anxious as a result of the risky attempt. Upon learning of the human misery, they joined in a thunderous party. They felt secure. Zion was now theirs by right.
Imagine being able to build anything.
And guys, that's it for today. Now you understand why and how Adam was eat the fruit, because he listened to his wife. And so today you see how society collapsed because of the voice of a woman. Um Thank you guys for watching. If you like my video, give me thumbs up, subscribe, and I'm trying to give read the books of the lost book from the Bible, and that's a series I'm gonna keep reading, so you can join as well, so you can listen to it, because there's a part missing from, it's not missing, hidden from people from the Bible, and they didn't put it on the 66 book. But as we go along, we're gonna bring all those missing pieces together, so you can have a clear image how to survive and how the creation was made, and to be a better Christian. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you.